All right, this is going to be a very different episode of Tatooine Sons. We are going to take the next however long it takes for us to address the Gina Carano situation, and not only what she said, but what the ramifications were that both within Lucasfilm and within fandom and in Star Wars, because it does affect Star Wars, and we'll explain that in a moment. And then we're going to talk about some changes for the show going forward. We think it's the right time, based on that, to take a little bit of a break and then make some changes in the show. So we're going to share all of that in just a few minutes. This is going to be, like I said, a very different episode. This is Tatooine Sons.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody listen to it.
Okay. How you doing, gentlemen?
I'm good.
Samuel the Hutt's good. What about you, BB Nate? This is the first episode we've done where BB Nate didn't do the intro.
I know, it felt weird.
It did feel a little weird.
It is. It does set a different tone.
It does, and everything about this episode is going to feel a little weird.
Yeah, why'd you gotta ruin it, Dad?
I set us off on the wrong. We just didn't feel like the traditional opening was appropriate when we're dealing with such weighty subject matter as this. And before we even get into that, just not really any banter, but Sam and I and Nate and I and all of us, really, we've all been talking about the Gina Carano situation for a couple of weeks, and really, what does that mean? What does that mean for us? What does that mean for Star Wars? What does that mean for podcasting for us? And there's a lot to hit on, and so we're going to do that. We're going to do it in a very thought through and systematic approach, and we ask for grace, and we ask for an open mind if you're listening to this. And let me do this before we jump in to actually talking about this. Let me explain why we don't normally address these types of things on the show. We don't talk about politics on Tatooine.
That's not what we are.
No,
we're a Star Wars podcast.
We don't talk about like social issues and the Gina Carano thing has been going on Twitter for a year.
Yeah.
Before the second season started,
oh, yeah.
It was a big deal. There's lots of things that happen on social media that we don't like and that we disagree with, and we never bring up.
Yeah. Because it's not our place. It's not relevant to Star Wars at the time.
It's not Star Wars.
It doesn't affect it. Star Wars is normally an escape from reality, not a... Yeah, we don't feel the need to bring that into it. It's supposed to be a fun podcast where we talk about Star Wars, not stuff that's revolving around Star Wars.
Yeah, this
doesn't affect it.
This is a dad and his two sons talking about a galaxy far, far away. That's what we've been doing for over almost 3.5 years now.
Jeez.
And we have never addressed anything political, whether it be Mark Hamill's tweets regarding Donald Trump or Gina Carano's Instagram posts about the 2020 election. We've never addressed these things, and because it doesn't affect Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And people that are acting in Star Wars, that are writing Star Wars, that are editing Star Wars, that are producing Star Wars, they are allowed to have their opinions, and they should be allowed to express them without us having a need to comment and to criticize. And that's not what this podcast is about. But the fact that Gina Carano has been removed from the Mandalorian show means that it's directly impacting Star Wars in a significant way. And we knew when this happened that we were going to have to address it.
And we couldn't just address how it affects Star Wars because we needed to address all aspects of the situation.
Right. Because it's complicated. It's not simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not something that you can put into 280 characters on Twitter and solve. And no one even we don't expect this to solve anything today. We're not trying to solve anything today. We're trying to share our perspective, which is going to be different than a lot of the perspectives that you're going to hear and that you're going to see. And we hope that 3+ years of hearing us for an hour plus a week will allow you to understand that who we are and not create a firestorm around an episode.
Yeah.
Judge us by the all of our work instead of just the title of an episode. Okay. And we're not going to clickbait title this episode. Okay. It's going to be very simple. And there's a reason also why, and I think I mentioned it on the last episode. There was a reason why we didn't address it last week.
It was a little too soon.
It's not too soon. Like we are personally injured.
No,
we're not. Our life is no different today because Gina Carano is no longer going to be playing Cara Dune. And that would be really, arrogant to even make that claim or that thought. But, we also didn't want to be reactionary. And so much of the problem regarding these types of things, not just Gina Carano, but, everything going on with Star Wars when it comes to the content, The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker and all of these different things, the frog lady's eggs, all of this stuff. The problem is people react and they don't take a step back and process. And we were not going to fall into that category for us. Okay. Not that anybody that addressed this on their podcasts a week ago or before then when it first happened did anything wrong.
No.
We made the choice for ourselves to slow down, take some time, talk and process and honestly pray because we're people of faith. And, we're going to, we've never hidden that and that affects who we are. And we hope that, you can respect that, with this. And here's the other, we'll talk about that in a little bit later. That's why
getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
This is why we have the notes.
It is. All right. Let's just first, without the, talking about the impact or anything like that, let's talk about what she actually said. Cause when I woke up that Wednesday morning, whatever it was, the 10th or 11th, 10th or whatever, I think of February, and I read that Lucasfilm has gone on record stating that Gina Carano is no longer, playing Cara Dune and no longer under contract. I went and I was honestly not surprised.
No.
In that moment. She's been extremely vocal, extremely political. And generally speaking, controversy up to a point is okay, but controversy that stirs up a lot of negative attention is not good. All right. And so she stirred up a lot of negative attention. She seemed to, be very much on the side of, some, potential fraud in the election. And that's not a popular opinion. And we're not going to talk about anything like that because it doesn't relate to Star Wars. And it really doesn't matter, because President Biden is the president and we, our God has told us that we to respect, the leaders of our country and we will respect, the leader of our country, with that. And so, but she said some things that were really negative. Right. And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, what did she say? She's outspoken.
Yes.
She doesn't back down and she said something and I'm like, okay, what did Gina do that got her fired? And so I started researching news articles, on Google. You do the search, Gina Carano fired, news, and there's article after article.
Yeah.
When I read it, all I was reading, I wasn't reading her quote. Their quote was not listed in the first 5 or 6 articles. The actual quote wasn't listed. What it was that she made anti-Semitic statements.
That's what the article said.
All the articles said she made anti-Semitic statements.
But they didn't provide her actual statement.
No. But the reality is, when I read that, I'm like, good.
Yeah.
Fire her.
Yeah.
It's
I
not
agree.
good at all. No.
It's racism.
No.
So here's a little reason why that's important to us. Okay. Because my grandfather in 1905, when he was only 2 years old, was forced to flee Tsarist Russia in the pogroms because he was Jewish. And then he fled to Germany, and they left Germany and came to the United States, fortunately before the Nazi regime rose to power. But this is an important issue for me.
Yeah.
I am a student of history. I'm a student of religion. I am a Christian, which means I follow Jesus Christ, but I also understand the horrific history of organized Christianity when it relates to the Jewish people. And I'm a passionate critic of that outside of Star Wars.
Like things such as the Crusades?
The Crusades. And, it's the religion of Nazi Germany was Christianity, and it's been widely documented that most of Nazi Germany's propaganda was built on the foundation of some absolutely horrific writings by Martin Luther, who led the Protestant Reformation. Christianity has had a history of anti-Semitism that is horrendous.
Yes.
So I have pledged my life to stand against that. And I have. And I've sat with political leaders in Israel and told them that. So this is a big deal.
Yes.
To me.
So when I saw Gina Carano said anti-Semitic comments, I'm like, fire her. But then I'm like, the right thing to do is to find out what she said.
Mm-hmm.
And so I researched until I found the actual, which wasn't even her quote. She was retweeting or reposting an image with this quote on Instagram from someone else.
Okay, so she didn't even say it.
But she was
supporting it.
Exactly. She agreed with it.
There's a reason why so many people would say things like retweet does not equal endorsement. But the reality is,
it does.
If you retweet it, then you're responsible for it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good rule of thumb when it comes to social media, gentlemen. Okay. Because it's true. All right. What did she say? This was the quote that she retweeted. Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. And because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? Don't comment on the anti-Semitic nature, whether or not it is or not. At this point, start with you, Samuel Lahett. What do you feel about this comment by Gina Carano?
My initial reaction is fear.
Explain.
To an extent. Because if that is true, then I'm worried for the future of the country, or just
explain when you say if that is true. If what is true?
If the fact that the way Nazis were able to round up the Jews and do what they did to them was because they turned neighbor on neighbor, that scares me. Because if that's how it starts, it feels like that's what could be happening today. I'm not saying that there's a Holocaust coming, or that this is even what's supposed to be happening. Like this is like there are people out there turning people for this reason. But if that is the case, it is eye-opening and frightening to me.
BB Nate, what are your thoughts on her comments?
I agree with Sam. I think that this is frightening, but I don't think that we're really close to there yet. And I feel like I've been saying this for years. If you get to know the other person, not their political views, we've seen people know and love each other. I mean, I know people that we don't have the same political views, but I like them as a person. They're good people, and I wouldn't do anything to them, and they wouldn't do anything to me. And so I don't think that it'll happen soon, and so I don't have much to be frightened about now. So I really don't think that there is much we could do. So
I think what I'm getting at is, I'm not saying it's happening now, but it is good to be aware of the warning signs, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's fair. 2009, I had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. for a conference. And while I was there, I went to the National Holocaust Museum. Mm-hmm. And they had a traveling exhibit. It was a temporary exhibit on display. And it was the propaganda of Nazi Germany in the 20s and 30s. And I remember walking through the propaganda. So these are like videos. These are posters. This is, buttons that were people wore. And I remember just being chilled by how effective that propaganda could be. Mm-hmm. It doesn't start by people just deciding to round up Jews in Nazi Germany. It starts by changing the hearts and the minds of the people so that their
perceptions of the people.
The Jews are,
monsters?
No, it doesn't start by teaching people that Jews are monsters. It starts by teaching people that Jews are unpatriotic. They don't support the country. And then it moves to they don't support the country because there's a conspiracy. Now, if you're listening to this right now, it doesn't matter which side of the political aisle you're on, these statements should scare you. Because this is not just Gina Carano talking about the political situation because she tends to skew conservative in an political environment that isn't conservative right now. This was the same stuff that was being said by the alt-right about the Democrats for 4 years. It's a conspiracy. They're out to get us. They're not patriotic. These types of things are bad no matter who's saying it. Mm. All right. Be careful about the words that you use. And so I'm challenged by that, because we pick our sides and then we point fingers at the other side. And that's generally bad, with it. And that's what's gone on with social media. Social media is so dangerous. Do these statements, the way that they were being described by these articles that first morning, that were not actually quoting her, because they would describe in a little bit more detail, they were claiming that Gina was saying that conservatives, Republicans, Trumpers, whoever, people that didn't support the Biden side of the election, were being treated like Jews in the Holocaust. Does this quote seem to suggest that to you?
I think there's if you're reacting, I can see where that mindset would come from, because it does seem like a one-to-one comparison that people who are being silenced because of their political views right now are being treated like Jews in the Holocaust. That if you take it for face value, just initial gut response, I can see where you would get that from. But that's not what they're saying. They're not saying that Republicans or whoever is being silenced is being treated like a Jew. They're just saying
like a Jew in Nazi Germany during the Holocaust. Right.
They're just saying this is what things looked like before the Holocaust started, but it's what led up to some of the events of the Holocaust. I can see where you have to be careful with that association. It is a very slippery slope to start comparing things to Jews in Nazi Germany, because you can slip into anti-Semitic territory really quickly.
Yeah, even not even anti-Semitic.
Just insensitive.
Absolutely insensitive.
Right. You can slip into that territory very, very quickly and very easily.
Absolutely.
But do I think that happened here? Not at all. When I first read this quote, I did not get insensitive or anti-Semitic in any way. Could that be because I've side more, or I'm conservative? It very well could be. That very well could influence my thought process on things. But I do not see how a comparison about warnings and just being careful about warning signs and what to look out for is insensitive or anti-Semitic.
Oh, me? Okay. Yeah. I don't think, like what Sam said, I think that if you look at this immediately and I can see where they are coming from, I don't see that. I really don't, but I can see where people could come from. People react emotionally really quickly, and it happened really quickly. Everything started to blow up like fast. And so
within hours of this,
everybody just started just reacting and thinking, oh, that's terrible. It's anti-Semitic. And so if people did just rested on it, reflected on it, made sure that understood what it actually meant, I think everything would have happened way differently. And I think that if Lucasfilm took time, it would have happened way differently.
I think we can't, the one thing that we have to be very careful about is judging anybody's motives.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't know what their motives are.
Right.
We can speculate, but that generally creates situations where we think, well, this person said these things because they're insensitive, and they're insensitive because they're hateful, and now we should deal with them from that perspective. Judging people's motives matter. Absolutely matter. But let's take the facts before we deal with the motives. So
right. And, the reaction to her post very well could have been a snowball effect. Someone read an article, and one person, I'm not saying only one person had, when they read this tweet or this post, only one person thought that it was anti-Semitic. There could have been a group of people. But what I'm saying is what very well could have happened is a small group of people, or one person wrote an article or a reaction to it, said that they thought it was anti-Semitic, and that influenced a person's thought process when they went back and read the tweet. I don't remember the effect, but it's something like you have to be careful with in scientific studies. You cannot pre-influence somebody by giving them, it's like a one-sided question. I think the example is like, how long have you been sleeping, or how long have you been cheating on your wife, or something like that. Not that, but like it's implying something.
I think it is, when did you stop beating your wife?
Right. When did you stop beating your wife? That's saying, that's already putting them in a position where they have to agree with something or go into something.
It already assumes that you beat your wife.
Right. So when they're reading this and somebody said that they believe it has anti-Semitic meaning to it, or insensitive meaning to it, they're going to go into reading that tweet with that in the back of their mind, and they're going to read the pieces, or they're going to fit things to fit that narrative. That's just the human mind. That's how it works. I'm not saying that somebody's wrong because they do that. Everybody does it. It's just how the human brain works. So it very well could be that a small group of people said it, and then it grew from there because people associated it with it.
Yeah. Why do you think that Gina said this in the first place? Okay, let's do this from a position of pragmatism. Pragmatism meaning, what's in your best interest.
Okay.
Okay. And a pragmatic person would come to a conclusion that let me try to describe again. I just got done saying motives. We can't describe other people's motives or assume them, but let's just hypothetically assume Gina's position here and try to put ourselves in those shoes. Gina's one of the biggest stars in one of the hottest shows streaming in the world today.
Okay.
She's positioned, at least it was being assumed, to get her own series. Mm-hmm. Rangers of the New Republic, which we'll talk about that later on in the show. But everyone assumes that she's going to be one of the stars of that. That's going to be her own show. And It was based off the fact that Cara Dune's character is fantastic and she's done a great job portraying this character, and it's been a lot of fun, and people like that character. And so, and then she's tweeted some things in the past that have been, controversial. Mm-hmm. Okay. And those controversial statements have come back to bite her. And some of the time she's claimed she was poking fun. She was being lighthearted, and other people said that she was being insensitive to certain issues. Well, the reality is at that point, you take a step back and you're like, I got to be smarter about the things that I put out on social media. Mm-hmm. Okay. And yet the election happens and she comes down on this position of election fraud. And, you know, she said some things during that time that were really intense when it comes to that, in a very polarized political issue. And those came back to bite her right in the beginning of November, middle of November. There was rumors that they were going to announce her as the star of Rangers of the New Republic at the Disney Investors Day, the beginning of December. And they didn't. Mm-hmm. We don't know why. There's rumors why, but at this point, that's a big enough shot across the bow that you're like, okay, I've got to be really careful here if I want to keep this role. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think I get where you're coming from. There's been enough of a warning and enough close calls to where you should be more aware of what you're doing and more,
know that everything you're doing, everything that you're saying, everything that you're tweeting, everything you're posting on Instagram, everything you're putting out on Facebook, everything that you're doing is being analyzed. It's under a microscope right now.
Right.
And then yet she still tweets or shares this image with it. Mm-hmm. Why do you feel like she said this?
I think that I, of course, don't know why, and I can't answer that, but I feel like she shared it because any other person that shares a picture with a quote on it, they agree with it. I think that she agreed with it and that she just wanted to share it. And of course, it's their opinion and everybody else should be able to get one. And so I feel like she agreed with it, she shared it, and everything started to blow up. So, okay. Yeah.
I think she felt strongly enough about this issue that she was willing to risk either another shot across the bow or, as what happened here, fired, losing her job. She was willing to risk that to voice her opinion, voice her stance on this. And with a pretty strong statement. Granted, she didn't say it herself, but like we've said, if you're sharing it, it's as good as you saying it as well. It's just quoting it.
Let me stop here and just kind of pull ourselves out of the Gina Carano conversation and let me be a dad.
Okay.
For a second. Multiple times, thousands of times over the last 4 years, I have started a tweet, sometimes thinking they were funny, and then realized, stop, think, could this be misinterpreted, or is it even worth the fallout to make this joke or to say this statement? And then deleted the tweet. Mm. Because that's just being wise. That's just being smart about things.
Choosing
right?
your words.
It's also about thinking about how someone could this hurt someone? Mm-hmm. Are these words hurtful if I say them, even if they're trying to be funny? And a couple of times I failed on that, and it came back to bite us. We had some people that didn't like, a Raylo joke I did 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, with it. It wasn't sexist. It wasn't misogynistic, but it was poking fun at Raylo, and it came back at us. And so, then I became more careful, right? About everything that I did. As a dad, we live in a different world than I grew up in, guys. Mm-hmm. Everything you do is public. Every word you tweet or put on Facebook or whatever is public. There's a digital record for everything that you do on your phone. You know, we were watching Bull the other day, and Taylor, the hacker that works for TAC, she was like, nope, nothing disappears digitally. It's always there. You can find it. Guys, it's harder than ever to be a stupid teenager. I can't imagine growing up in a world where every word, every thought is the potential to come back and end things for you in your future. Be smart. All right. We'll talk about, some of that a little bit later, but that's a little extra piece there. Dad moment, I guess. All right. Let's talk about the response. So the next morning, when it came out, this was the official response from Lucasfilm. It just said official statement. I don't know who said it. I apologize about that, but it's widely received that this is the official statement by Lucasfilm on this situation. It says Gina Carano is not currently employed by Lucasfilm, and there are no plans for her to be in the future. Nevertheless, her social media posts denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable.
What is denigrating?
To put down or damage them.
Okay.
Hurting, destroying, criticizing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I understand where you're coming
from. Thoughts on that statement by Lucasfilm?
Short. I mean, strange. It was not elaborating on anything. It was kind of confusing a little bit. I read it and I was confused, and at first I'm like, well, this isn't true, because we never got who it was from. We just saw official statement by Lucasfilm, and growing up in the world of clickbait and we got this covered,
Mike Zero, right?
I know to check my sources. I know to check, and I don't think we've ever gotten who said it, but
it was an official statement.
Yeah.
It's a lawyer.
Yeah. So
it's a group of lawyers.
I saw the article and I'm like, this not real. And so I researched it a little bit more and I found out it was. And I'm like, that's just a strange statement. It kind of was, if it was longer and we've gotten more and all that stuff, I think I would have believed it at first, but it was just, it's weird to me.
Yeah. It does seem strange and short. Like, that's it. That's all you're saying. It was not detailed. It didn't, it was odd. It is an odd statement. Is it a reasonable statement? If what they're saying is true, then yeah, I think that is a fair statement and reason to fire somebody. You should not denigrate anybody based on their cultural and religious identities. I agree with that.
Yeah. I think it's telling in a couple of spots. Okay. Let's think about this from a perspective of a lawyer writing it, because a lawyer is trying to make sure that they do not get sued for defamation by Gina Carano.
What does that mean?
Defamation lawsuit means that if Gina Carano chose to sue Lucasfilm for defamation of character, it would be, they said things about her that damaged her character and her perception, her reputation so significantly that she could never work again.
Okay.
And it's only defamation if it's not true.
Okay.
Okay. So a couple statements. One, they didn't say they fired her.
That's true. They said she's just currently not employed.
So what that tells me, and as soon as I read this statement, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Now some things make more sense as far as they didn't announce her as the star of Rangers of the New Republic. They seem to have been on track to record season 3 to film season 3 of The Mandalorian beginning of the year for a November release. And now they're not. They've delayed that till April from what we hear. So they're holding that back. Well, what could be reasons why they would hold that back? People are in negotiations for contracts. The show has become huge. I'm guaranteeing you that Pedro Pascal is going to get paid a whole lot more money for season 3 than he did for season 1 in this. And Cara Dune, if she's getting a contract for Rangers of the New Republic and The Mandalorian, and it's this big crossover event, we'll talk about all that in a little while. All of that coming together, she's not under contract. Okay. They chose not to renew her contract is what this is. Or they were just saying she's not under contract.
Right.
They never said she was fired.
No.
Okay. She's not under contract. And the reason that, and then a separate statement. Notice how it's worded. There are no plans for her to be in the future. Well, that's new. All right. That's like, okay, we've put a stop on this now. We're not negotiating with her any longer. With it. But that also, it's got, the door's cracked.
It's open-ended.
The door was cracked at this point. Okay. The door was cracked enough for them to say, but that could change. However, there's this caveat. Nevertheless, her social media posts denigrating people based on their culture and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable. It could be argued that they're not even talking about the tweet that
no, she's had multiple tweets in the past that have been controversial.
So it's probably not, and I think that it's been widely concluded that it wasn't just this post. It was this post on top of all the other posts that led to this decision not to renew her contract with it. Here's what we need to understand. Lucasfilm has every right to do whatever Lucasfilm's doing.
Yeah. They're a business.
They're a private business that gets to make business choices about their business that they agree with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
This wasn't based on her race.
No.
This wasn't based on her gender.
Religion.
This wasn't based on her religion. All of this. It was based, according to this, on the fallout from her choices on social media over the last couple of years has gotten to the point that we no longer want to employ her.
And that is completely reasonable.
They have every right to do that.
Absolutely. They're a business. That's why a lot of times when you go for interviews for jobs, they check your social media to see what you share and what you post and stuff. It's the same concept. Right? Am I?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're correct.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, your Twitter feed can keep you out of college.
Yeah.
Honestly, I remember a few years ago, there were the day before the NFL draft. I think it was 2017 during the NFL draft. A quarterback from the University of Wyoming, somebody had screenshotted some tweets from him 7 or 8 years earlier when he was a stupid. I mean, imagine he's 20 something years old, 21, 22 years old at the oldest. He's like 10. I'm not saying, I don't know exactly when it was, but he was probably like 14, 15 years old.
Right.
And he tweeted a joke and it was racial and it was wrong. It was wrong. It was horrible. And he deleted it. But he was 15 years old, let's say. And he made a stupid tweet. Somebody screenshotted that tweet and then released it to the press the day before the draft. And his draft status dropped like a lead balloon. In that draft. He got drafted and he's having a decent career in the NFL, but it was huge when that happened. So the NFL has the right to NFL teams have the right to make those choices, right? Is there anything wrong with an NFL team saying, wait a second, what does that tell us about this person? Okay. So I think that we need to all separate the emotion from this. I think that there are people that need to separate their emotion from Gina's original statement, calling it anti-Semitic, and say maybe not as anti-Semitic as we're saying.
Right.
And those people on the other side that are saying Lucasfilm fired her because of that tweet or that Instagram repost or whatever, maybe they need to step back and think there's more to the reason that they let her go. And they didn't fire her. First of all, they didn't renew her contract. And secondly, they have the right to do that as a business.
And they didn't fire her, so they necessarily could bring her back.
It's highly unlikely, but you are right.
James Gunn had the same situation, of course, totally different, but he was brought back.
Yeah, let's talk about this. Why do you think, again, this is motives, but this is where, this is a podcast and people talk about speculation. We speculate about Star Wars. Let's speculate about this. Why do you think Lucasfilm made the decision that they made?
I mean, the only thing I can think of really is they're gauging the response to things she has said, not necessarily this tweet. It could have been previous tweets. Gauging the response and was realizing that generally the social media response to her tweets were negative. It was a negative backlash to what she was saying. And I think Lucasfilm decided they did not want to be associated with an actress who repeatedly says these things and causes a fan response that is like that. I believe that they decided fans don't like her. We're not going to work with her. I think that is that's where they're going with it.
Okay.
And it could have been like, they don't want it to seem like her beliefs reflect the company's.
Makes sense. What do you think, BB Nick?
I think that it was just about everything in a business is about how much money you can make.
It should be if you're a business
and that's
owner,
always
right?
what it is. And it's what Lucasfilm
and values
like.
change. Your values, there are things that you value, and the way that you earn that money is important. But at the same time, it's a business, and we need to understand that. And Disney and Lucasfilm are in the business of making money.
Yes, and there's a lot of people in Star Wars that is like, oh, Disney shouldn't let the franchise go on. But you got to think, if they didn't let the franchise go on, they wouldn't have made money. Star Wars is a big money maker. And so they cared about the money. So they made that no matter what people said. I feel like with this, they thought, okay, a lot of people don't like this actress and for what she said and what she has done and everything. And so we should unemploy her, and see how it happens. And yes, a lot of people had a backlash against the firing, but
nowhere near
the
positive response to
what happened.
to the news that Gina Carano was no longer with in The Mandalorian.
So they made, in that case, it was a coin flip, and they won with the side that would make them the most money. And so,
do you think that if Gina Carano came back within a day or two of this all blowing up and said, again, this is all speculation,
right?
But had said she shouldn't have shared that post, that it was not what she was meaning. She's not anti-Semitic. She's horrified by what happened to the Jews, and she chose her words more carefully, or whatever, some type of apologetic statement, with it, that we could have seen at some point them renew her contract. Bring her back for The Mandalorian season 3, announce her as in somewhat, it reminds me of that line in Wicked. You guys remember we listened to the Wicked soundtrack, the musical Wicked, all the time, right? And the wizard, is talking to Elphaba. And he says, sometimes the most celebrated are the rehabilitated, come back. He's like, just come with me. We'll work this out. I can put you in this position again. You just have to toe this line. Now walk this line. Don't say these things that you've been saying. Don't tweet these things. Apologize for it. We can make all of this go away.
Okay.
Very similar to the James Gunn. Now, let's just be really clear, because you brought up the James Gunn thing and I want to address this.
Yes.
What James Gunn was no longer renewed to be a part of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 about was clearly inappropriate content that he was tweeting or putting out there. So we're not saying that he didn't do anything wrong, but what we're saying is that they rehabilitated him. They brought him back, and nobody talks about that.
Nope.
James Gunn is James Gunn now. He's directing Guardians of the Galaxy 2. It's all exciting. Or 3. Yeah, that's what I mean. So 3. Gosh, they've already done 2 of those, haven't they? 3. So the point I'm making is, do you think that if Gina would have been like, no, I just cooked the golden goose.
Yeah.
It's time to make this right. I'm sorry. Here's my apology. Do you think that they would have brought her back?
Absolutely.
Not Anytime.
Not soon. They wouldn't do it like after she posted it a couple days later. Be like, okay, she's back, because then everybody would be like, okay, they just want an apology. But in a couple
months, maybe, or a few months, yeah, I could see it happening.
I think it was again like the James Gunn thing came out. He apologized, and in a couple months or a few months later, they're like, okay,
it was quite a while on James Gunn. It was quite a while. It wasn't just a month or two. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I think it very well could have been a possibility.
What does this tell us about Lucasfilm as a company?
It's tough to draw a conclusion here. I was gonna say they listened to fan response, but if that were the case, then The Last Jedi would be no more. So
no, but I don't agree with that, because I think The Last Jedi controversy is built around a film. First of all, it's not around a character.
Okay.
All right. The film is critically received very well.
Okay.
There are a passionate fan base that support The Last Jedi, which we're a part of, with that. And that's the kind of controversy that you like as a business, right?
Oh, that's fair.
It's controversy that's getting people to continue to talk about something.
PR.
And they made a whole lot of money off of The Last Jedi.
That's true.
And they're still going to make a whole lot of money off The Last Jedi.
It doesn't mar their reputation.
No, it doesn't mar their reputation. Okay. This one, they feel like, do you think that Lucasfilm feels like Gina Carano damaged their brand?
I think it is a concern that they have, and a legitimate one. If you are worried that somebody's opinions who is employed for you can hurt your business, I think you have every right to fire that person or to unemploy that person. Because if you're in a business, your main priority should be your business and your brand. And if they were worried that what she said is going to hurt the brand of Lucasfilm, then they decided to fire her, and the rubric they used to judge that was the social media response to what she said.
Okay. BB Nate, what do you think? What can we learn about Lucasfilm from this?
I think that we learn that whatever makes them the most money, they'll go with. And that's, again, how a business should be. If it hurts their brand, then they will fire or change. Nothing really with the films has hurt their brand. That might, like we said, Last Jedi might have actually gotten them more publicity. And so I think that nothing there has affected them. But if an actor/actress makes comments and that people aren't happy about, and some people get offended by, that's not good for their brand. It'll start hurting people.
Yeah. Again, if these were truly anti-Semitic comments, then the damage to their brand is pretty significant.
It is. Okay? And so if it was truly anti-Semitic, what they did was the right choice, was the correct action. And
well, what if they're not? I mean, we spent the first 15, 20 minutes of the show making the argument, as three gentlemen with Jewish ancestry, that are very passionate about the issue of anti-Semitism, and speak about, and from my perspective, speak about anti-Semitism from a Christian perspective, and have called Christians out for anti-Semitism for the last, vocally, for the last 12 years. Made the decision 12 years ago that I will not be silent on this issue of Christian anti-Semitism any longer, and I'm going to speak into it. Okay. So, but we also argued that the statement isn't anti-Semitic.
Yeah, I understand that. But there was a lot of people that did think that. As you can see, the first 7 articles you read said it was. And so there are just a lot of people that think so. And so they just made the decision that firing her would be the best business decision. I don't know. Of course, we can't figure out motives. We never will be able to unless they put in writing, this was our motive. But we can assume that this was a business decision, not a personal decision.
Yeah. I would say this, in talking through this over the last couple of weeks, and this is another reason why, or week and a half, this is a reason why it's important to not vocalize your opinions on social media about these types of things, or put it in the podcast episode until you've had a chance to talk and process. Because it's just bad. Reactions are bad. Right? the hot take culture. We joke about that. We have a whole segment for 3.5 years on our show called Hot Takes. The hot take culture creates problems. Okay. So this could not be a hot take. This needed to be a well thought out take. Okay. And there's a lot of people that had hot takes about this that said things like, it's a politically driven agenda and they hate conservatives. Lucasfilm and Disney hate conservatives and they're trying to end, the conservative movement and all this. No, Disney and Lucasfilm want to make a lot of money.
Exactly.
And the culture has shifted. There's this concept. It's a theoretical, like, a philosophical concept called the Overton window. It was made by this guy named last name Overton. Yeah. And it was the idea that you don't change society. Society doesn't, that's the right way to word it. Society doesn't change overnight. Okay. You don't go from the 1950s, Leave It to Beaver, Ward and June Cleaver and Wally and Beaver and Eddie Haskell and Lumpy and the guy goes in his suit with his hat and his trench coat to work every day and they have one car and they come back and meanwhile June has been at home in her apron and perfectly manicured nails and hair and makeup, cooking all day and cleaning and all this. You don't go from that to the way that it is today overnight. All right. And I'm not saying either is right or wrong. What I'm saying is that change from 1950s Leave It to Beaver to Arrested Development, both on television, right? And culturally.
Right.
Because culture is being reflected by television.
Right.
Okay. You don't make that change overnight. It happens slowly. It's a shifting of a window.
Right.
Okay. Over years. Right. What is the middle ground? What's the acceptable spectrum on both sides or acceptable end of the spectrum on both sides and what is outside of acceptable behavior on both sides.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay. So it shifts through time. Well, I think Disney and Lucasfilm have looked and the Overton window in this situation has shifted away from the things that she has now exhibited what is considered by society in the United States primarily, but also most English speaking and developed first world societies. What she's done over the last year has proven to be outside of acceptable behavior.
All right. I think,
and they made a choice based on that.
And that is
they're right.
And that's, it's, we don't have to agree or like.
No.
Okay. And I'm going to be honest with you. There were things that she'd post and I'd be like, I would never post that. Come on, Gina. What are you thinking? All right. This one's not necessarily in that category. Other things that she's done. Yeah. Come on. You're not thinking clearly. Okay. Because the Overton window has shifted.
Yeah.
And there are things, you just got to think things through a little bit better. Right. And think about how it affects others. Okay. Thoughts on the fan response. We've experienced and we've seen it all over. You guys are on Facebook. You don't do Twitter. You don't do Instagram. We joke. We don't even know how to do Snapchat. Wouldn't know where to start, with that. Not that this would be on that, but anyway, social media and the response, seeing in articles, seeing fan response, that kind of thing over the last couple of weeks. What's it been like for you guys?
It was overwhelmingly, positive to the, unemployment of Gina Carano. Like, that's all I saw pretty much was positive, response to it. From, I'm friends with a lot of Star Wars people on Facebook, through Celebration and stuff, other podcasters. And every single one of them were extremely excited and happy to see her go. And I think that they're coming from the point of where you came from. You saw that it was because she said something anti-Semitic. You're like, good riddance. And I think that that's where they are with that. And I think that that is fair. If someone says something genuinely racist or anti-Semitic or whatever, you should be glad that they are no longer employed for that company or whatever in this case. But when you know more information about this, as we do, we looked at the quote and we've taken time to think about it and form our own opinions. If you do that and still believe one way, that's fine. But I can't agree with that.
I mean, the response, of course, I woke up in the morning, I saw it, and it was really the only thing I saw for a little bit, but
thank God for WandaVision, so we had something else to see on social
media. Well,
right?
It was different for me too. I'm in a lot of DC groups as well, and
so you were seeing a lot of Snyder Cut stuff.
I was seeing, because that day they started releasing some teasers and stuff, and so it was very nice. And like I've been saying behind the scenes, I'm more invested in DC fandom now than ever because it's easily not as toxic as Star Wars. I don't know if it'll ever will be. I mean, and again, this is kind of going off the track, but it's just, I've been done for a while with Star Wars fandom. I've kind of started to try to disconnect myself a little bit because it's just, like you said a couple weeks ago, it is exhausting being a Star Wars fan. It's exhausting being connected. It's exhausting just trying to make your way through it. And so it's hard, but seeing everything and seeing again the positivity in the DC fandom, with the suicide prevention fundraiser for the Snyder Cut, they released over $500,000, and it's very nice to be in a different spot. And I think, and especially with the celebration and the excitement around Gina Carano's firing.
Yeah, we can call it that. It's fine. Yeah.
It was difficult being around that and seeing that all, and it was hard to go through it, but I had those little beacons of hope every now and then, and it kind of brushed past me, and I tried to let it brush past me. I didn't want it to affect me all day, and so it didn't. So
what was more discouraging to me was not the people who were excited about it or supportive of Lucasfilm's decision. What was discouraging to me was the lack of questioning it, or lack of the other side of the argument, or even the middle. You know, I didn't see any posts, anybody like saying, hold on, let's think about this, or anybody like in a gray area, or even saying, I don't think Lucasfilm should have done that. All I saw were positive responses to it. And that was what was discouraging, was the lack of the other side of the argument.
I saw a couple people that were disagreeing with it. I saw one person that said, I'm extremely left, and I do have very mixed feelings on this. I'm going to take time to figure out what this means to me and how I should react to it. And I was like, I very much respect that. I very much respect how he took time on it. And so instead of the other people that disagreed with it, they were like immediately like, oh, this is not right. Everybody's wrong. What happened wasn't good and all that stuff. And so I think we just all needed to take a step back and let it breathe.
You know, for me, it almost reinforced her comment, her quote that supposedly got her fired. the thing, it's kind of like, you know, this idea of, now, of course, I'm not equating the firing of Gina Carano to the Holocaust. That's absurd. And let me stop there. Sometimes absurdity is good, right? It's making absurd statements.
It's like satire, right?
Yeah. It's like Thomas Paine. I think it was Thomas Paine. No, it wasn't Thomas Paine. It was somebody else. I'm sorry. It was a guy who wrote, about the food shortage in the 1700s, I think, in Great Britain and in England. And people were just terrified over the lack of food and the overpopulation scenario. And he wrote an op-ed in the...
What is an op-ed?
An opinion editorial. Okay. In the newspaper in London. That basically, it was long. It was called A Modest Proposal. Okay.
Okay.
And it was basically, well, the solution to both the food problem and the overpopulation problem is to kill our children and cook them and eat them. And he gives this, it's like this huge article, right? It was absurd. But it allowed people, when they read it, to realize, let's take a step back. It's satire. And it was presented in the English class I took as satire, right? Mm-hmm. So you take a step back and you're like, okay, that's absurdity. All right. Let's figure out real solutions for this because nobody was coming up with any real answers.
Right.
Right. So let's deal with real answers to this. And that absurdity was good. All right. Sometimes there's a value in shocking people.
Oh, and I'm sure he got backlash for it.
Oh, yeah. But there's a value in shocking people. Mm-hmm. Okay. She didn't say anything anti-Semitic. She didn't accuse, Democrats of putting, conservatives, liberals putting conservatives, progressives putting conservatives in a concentration camp and sending them to the gas chambers. That's not what she did. Okay. But she did say that the thought process that leads to that is this idea of creating division and hatred for your very neighbor, for the very people next to you that are different, that think differently and act differently than you, which was where the Holocaust started. Right. Okay. And then immediately, because she thinks differently and she acts differently, she was canceled. And it's sort of, a lot of people were suggesting that it suggests that what she said has got a lot more accuracy to it. That's, you have to think for yourself on that. And if you're listening to this, I'm talking to you right now. Think for yourself on this issue. I'm not saying that this is the Holocaust happening. What I am saying is that shouldn't she have the right to make a statement that causes you to process and feel uncomfortable? When did we get to the point where everybody has to agree with everybody else on everything?
Right.
And if you disagree with me, then you're an evil person that deserves to be canceled. Right now, there are people listening to this podcast who likely want to cancel us.
Because of what we said.
Because of what we're saying.
Yeah.
I have not attacked you. We have not attacked you. We have not attacked anybody. We have had a conversation for the last hour about a very complicated, weighty issue. And we don't have solutions for it, but we're giving you our thoughts and opinions on that. If that challenges you so much that we should be canceled, then that says more about you than it says about us. Because what that means is that you're scared of other opinions. We follow you on social media. We listen to your podcasts. We watch your videos. And we know your opinions are different than ours. And then we hang out with you.
Yep.
Knowing we disagree with you on issues that are extremely important to us. Social issues. Things like abortion. Let's just go there for a second. We fundamentally disagree with this. And if we were able to sit down in Scum and Villainy Cantina with you, and you get a beer, and me get a glass of wine, and these kids get something else, and have a conversation for hours, neither of us would change each other's minds. But we could have a conversation, and it would get uncomfortable. It would get uncomfortable for us. It would get uncomfortable for you. But we would both be better for having that conversation. We need to return to that, not just in Star Wars. We talked about that in Star Wars. Mm-hmm. There are people that dislike The Last Jedi that we would love to sit down. There's a reason I don't engage in Last Jedi dialogue on Twitter anymore, because it's no value to it. But if I was sitting across from somebody that told me they didn't like The Last Jedi and we were having a dinner together, I would have that conversation.
Yep.
Because we can have a conversation.
Exactly.
In this situation,
you can't scream at each other.
We can't have that conversation because this is a podcast.
It is one-sided.
And it is us having this conversation. And you're not a part of that. Mm-hmm. But I hope that you listening to this right now understand that we are good people that love our neighbor.
Or try to as best we can.
And try our best. And that respect you for your opinions and would love to continue to have that dialogue with you on issues. And love to talk Star Wars with you more than anything.
Right.
But we don't have to agree on everything.
If everybody agreed on everything, nothing would happen.
If everybody agreed,
nothing would change.
If you and I agree on every single issue, then one of us is a moron. because one of us isn't thinking for themselves. Why do we have to have everybody agree with us? Why are we so fearful of disagreement that we shut down that disagreement? I remember being, 20 years old and going to a movie theater and watching the movie with Michael Douglas and Annette Bening. You guys have never seen it, called The American President. He was a liberal president. I disagreed with him on so many political issues on that movie. But I remember it was about flag burning. It was a major issue in this movie. That's a complicated issue. I know people that have served and lost limbs in the military in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And for them, the idea of flag burning is like you spitting in their face. But I remember that president getting up there and addressing that issue. And I'm thinking, I can stand with that. He's like, I may not agree with you on an issue, on something that you say, but I will fight to my death to give you the right to say it.
That's what this country was founded on, was freedom of speech.
We have lost that in this dialogue. And it's become the point where it's a right or wrong issue. You may disagree with me on abortion. I will fight for your right to make your argument. I will fight for the right for you to have a microphone and a Twitter account and an Instagram to make your argument. Because I cannot win. We cannot win issues. Morality cannot be legislated. Hearts have to be changed. Minds have to be changed, not silenced. And this is the problem that we're running into right now. All right, we're going to take a second to breathe, get some water, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what this means for Star Wars, specifically, like shows and such.
In-universe stuff.
In-universe stuff. That'll be up after this.
Hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
If you live long enough, you see the same eyes in different people.
All right, let's talk some Star Wars.
A little bit.
For just a few minutes. You good with that, BB Nate?
Yep.
BB Nate's personality is one to avoid conflict at all costs. So this has been a hard episode because it feels like he's just right in the middle of this conflict stuff that's going on. He just wants to stay out of it and go watch a movie.
That's true.
With it. I want to just say this though. It just kind of tie back in and then it'll bridge to our last conversation into the future of the conversation. Even if you think that Cara Dune, that Gina Carano should have been removed from her position, this is not a good day for Star Wars.
No.
This isn't a good situation for the franchise. This is bad for Star Wars. This is bad on screen. This is bad off screen. It's just bad for Star Wars. This isn't a thing that should be celebrated. Even if you think that she should have been fired, it should sadden you that the franchise that we love has to deal with this right now. Even if you're glad that she's gone.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a thing to be celebrated. And when it comes down to Star Wars itself, The Mandalorian, first of all, season 3, I think this is bad for The Mandalorian. All right. I think this is a bad situation. Not having Cara Dune in this is not a good situation. So I'm going to let Sam talk for a second. What do you think about this idea?
Yeah. I mean, the character hasn't been front and center the whole series by any means, but she has been quite crucial to many episodes and many plot points in the story. So I feel like we don't know what the plan is for season 3. We don't know what the plan was going to be before this. We don't know what it's going to be after this. But I think I think Cara Dune was going to have a role to play. I'm not sure how big of a role that was going to be. It could be very minor, just 1 or 2 episodes. It could have been she's with Mando at this point and she's helping him figure out how to be the ruler of Mandalore or whatever they're doing. I think Lucasfilm is fortunate enough with the current state of the Mandalorian to where they can work with
opens up an
this.
opportunity. Yeah.
They can work with this because the character is not super crucial. If she doesn't show up season 3, they say she's off doing some mission off some far corner of the galaxy. It's really not going to impact the story too much. She's not got any really continuing storylines in that show. If you think about it, there's nothing like, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen with that with Cara Dune. She's a ranger now or something like that. She's got that badge. She's like working for the New Republic to an extent now. That's about all we've got with her character. So there's not like we're going to miss out on some story point with her character if she's not in season 3. So I think Star Wars is fortunate for that. Will I be sad to see the character of Cara Dune go? Absolutely. I thought she was one of the coolest characters in the show. I mean, the one scene in the finale where her blaster jams, which, by the way, I'm glad they finally showed that in Star Wars. I'm like, why do the guy's blasters always work all the time, right? It fails on her. She can't get the thing working, so she uses it as a club on a trooper. That's cool. All right, she was a cool character, and I'm going to miss her. But I think they can work with her absence.
I don't think carrying off that, people could be like, well, they could just recast her. Dealing with fandom, we know about recasting in universes. Of course, we had the Dark Knight trilogy with different Rachels, and that was weird. We had different War Machines.
Roadies.
Yeah, roadies.
They handled that well, though. And
they did handle that. They addressed it.
It's me.
It's me.
I'm here. Let's move on.
Yeah.
But in the Dark Knight trilogy, they didn't mention it once. We've had multiple things with recasting, and it never goes over well. It's always uncomfortable and confusing and awkward, and you don't know if
it takes you out of universe.
Exactly. Yep. We're like, is this a time jump to where they're very like way older, or what's going on and stuff? And it kind of removes you from immersion. So I don't think they recast her. They've never done that in Star Wars, and I don't think it would be a good idea to do that.
And you could bring up the Ahsoka point with Mandalorian, and that is a fair point, but it's different because you're not going from live action character to live action character. Yeah. It is taking a character from an animated universe and transitioning it to live action, at which point there will be cast issues.
Yeah, I'm never really okay with recasting, but casting a person to fit the, like, a live action person, like say the Ezra rumors that have been coming out, I'm okay with that. It's not recasting, it's casting a character to play in live action.
Right. Would you like to see Lars Mikkelsen play Thrawn? Yes.
Absolutely.
Would you like to see Taylor Gray play Ezra?
Of course.
But at the same time, there's a big difference between recasting and live action versus animation.
Absolutely.
Then taking a live action series and having Gina Carano play Cara Dune in seasons 1 and 2, and then a new character play. It's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air changing the mom after season 2 or something like that, which is it happened. It was weird.
And it was really uncomfortable, and it became a whole big talking point for the rest of the show and till now as well.
Yeah, they still talk about it. Yeah. What do you think about this when it comes to Rangers of the New Republic?
Go ahead, Nathan.
Okay, I think that it will. We don't know what it's about. That's a good thing. We knew Mandalorian had Cara Dune. Do I think that it leaves the possibility for it to be more about the New Republic, and maybe a couple people are called Rangers? Because we knew that there were trying to recruit other Rangers as well. So it could just be about them, a whole new group. And it could be also about the X-Wing pilots we've seen 3 or 4 times in the series. And so, I'm okay with it. We don't know what about the story. Does it weaken it with not having a character that's already established in Mandalorian? Yes. Do I think that it'll change the story? Not necessarily. We don't know the story.
The overarching story of the Rangers of the New Republic will stay the same overarching story, but the characters in it will be different, and they will have to do something either in Book of Boba Fett, in Ahsoka, in the Mandalorian season 3, whatever, to establish a character that will work over there. I don't think you can start with all brand new characters in the Rangers of the New Republic.
You need to have something grounded, something dangerous.
Well, the thing is you can also make the argument of we had completely new characters for Mandalorian and that took off. You can have completely new characters and the series will take off because it is Star Wars.
Even if it's the timeline of Rangers and how close it is to Mandalorian,
I get that.
You have to have overlap.
Even if the existing characters that are in it are the main characters are the X-Wing pilots, Dave Filoni and the other guy, which I don't think that Dave Filoni would act very much, but say it happens, theoretically.
That could work.
It could work. Those characters exist, but they're not main characters in the other story. They could have their own show. It'll work, and that's how they could tie it into Mandalorian. They could just have a problem that happens in Mandalorian or Ahsoka or something, where it all comes together. But I don't know. I really couldn't guess.
Yeah, I think Lucasfilm has handled this situation very well, actually. If they've made sure they've covered all their options if they were to fire.
They left the options open. They needed. Yeah.
And they didn't tell us what Rangers is about, really. They didn't say who was in it. So we don't know that from the beginning it could have had nothing to do with Cara Dune. So they've handled that situation well to where they can change it to where it's a completely different set of characters. They're new characters. We won't notice a difference. Maybe originally the plan was for Cara Dune to be the main character or a main character. Or maybe she was just going to be a mentor or something who would drop in every so often and like work with this new group of Rangers or something. But despite whether you agree with their decision or not, they have handled it well.
As a franchise, as a story,
yes.
Going forward, they put themselves in the best position they could have given the circumstances.
Right, but they are, for lack of a better term, shooting themselves in the foot a little bit by taking out this character because Cara Dune is such a cool, good character. I mean, Star Wars now is full of strong female characters, right? You've got Rey, you've got Ahsoka, you've got Jin, you've got Padme, you've got Leia, right? I mean, almost every female character is a strong female character, and Cara Dune was one of those, and if not one of the best, in my opinion. She could hold her own right up there with the big guys. She went toe-to-toe with Mando in that one episode with the bone broth, and almost won.
Right.
No armor or anything. And they're robbing Star Wars fans and future Star Wars generations of this character, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think you can recast Cara Dune with a new actress. I think that it's just going to create a festering wound within Star Wars fandom. Because, you've got your extremely significant portion and vocal, group of fandom that want her, that may love the character, but don't want Gina Carano there. And then you're going to have another group that are going to, every time they see Cara Dune as a recast character, they're going to be very frustrated about the entire situation. Mm-hmm. This problem needs to go away. As far as Star Wars and its story goes, Cara Dune needs to be gone. I don't think you can have her disappear.
No,
but it's complicated. Do they kill her off? Do they have her off somewhere else in the galaxy and just never talk to her again?
I think what they do is they say, somehow they handle it, just say she's off on some top secret mission or something off in the far reaches of the galaxy or something like that, which doesn't kill her off. It provides an explanation. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be fun no matter how they do it. But it also leaves it open-ended enough if somehow, for some reason down the line, they do decide to bring her back. Will they? Probably not. But it leaves it open-ended enough, and it provides enough of an explanation to where it happens. We were watching, what was it? Ocean's 13 the other day. And Danny, I think it was Danny, stepped off the plane and
Tess and
where's Tess and Isabel? And he's like, it's not their fight. And he's like, well, where are they? She's like, it's not their fight. It was an explanation. It worked. You're done for the rest of the movie.
Okay, so Julia Roberts and Catherine Zeta-Jones did not get a contract for this movie. Either they didn't want them in the movie or they didn't want to be in the movie, but they're not in the movie, so now we're moving on. Right. It's the same thing as kind of what you were talking about with Rhodey. It's like, it's me. I'm here. Exactly.
Let's just move on.
Oh, wait, that's not whatever the guy's name from Empire. Terrence Howard. That's not Terrence Howard. That's John Cheadle.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Another connection to Oceans. I love it.
But yeah, no, I think they just throw in a line real quick, explain where she is and why she's not there, and that's it.
BB Nate, is there ever the chance that this character of Cara Dune reappears when some of the, time heals all wounds, right? So, year down the road, do they create a comic to help tell her story and get her, get some closure with the character, or put her in a novel of some sort? Because she's a character that is well loved. Lots of people loved her. One of the things, I'm on Twitter, you guys aren't, right? And I see man, I hate Gina Carano, but man, I love Cara Dune tweets all the time. All right. I saw him for years. Okay. 2 seasons. Is that an option, or do you think that just would be opening up the Pandora's box all over again?
Yeah, I think it'd be just kind of picking at the scab of an old wound. I don't think that it would be good. I think that it would start creating more controversy. Of course, we would have probably the main amount of people be like, well, then why didn't you just put her back in the show? I rather recast her or get Gina Carano back. We want to see her finish her story, but she's a live action character, and kind of making her own comic series feels worse than just saying that she's off on a mission. Mm-hmm. It feels like, well, we wanted to finish her story, but we didn't want to do it on live action, which I would respect them not recasting it, but then again, it's, as I said years ago about people wanting a Snoke book explaining his backstory. It's another thing, another format people have to go to.
We're getting a whole Snoke series. It's called The Mandalorian.
Right.
Exactly.
It's because we saw him in the last season.
But all these people there are a lot of people that watch Mandalorian and aren't really Star Wars fans. So people that are like, well, I loved Cara Dune, but I don't want to have to go out of my way to finish her story by reading comics or reading a novel. And that was the same thing I had with Snoke. There are people that enjoy Star Wars but aren't into it enough to spend $20 on a book, or for a whole 6-issue miniseries $30 or $40 or something. It's a thing that I don't think would be reasonable.
And that goes back to how we started this segment. This isn't a good thing for Star Wars.
No.
They can make the best out of it as possible. And Sam, you feel like, and I tend to agree. They've put themselves in the best possible position they can to move on from Gina Carano, which was their choice. But at the same time, it's not good for Star Wars that this happened. For the casual fan, I think you're right. I think of people, like Kathy, who, Star Wars fan. Yeah. Star Wars fan, but she's not into all the stuff that we're into.
She's one of those that won't buy the comic series. If they
she
make
would never do that. Right. It's the Baby Yoda, generation, that group of Star Wars fans that came into Star Wars because of Baby Yoda. Right. Before he was Grogu, and they've watched the show because of that. And they're excited about Star Wars from that perspective. And they maybe don't even know what's going on. They're going to have to address it. They have to address the character of Cara Dune,
or the lack thereof, in this new season.
Unless this is a significant time jump.
Yeah.
And if it is a significant time jump, they could just kill her off screen. And while that feels like a horrible cop out, it could show that in this universe and in that job, anything could happen. Main characters aren't safe from dying off screen. But then people would be like, well, that's kind of just a weird way to do it. I think it would make more sense if they just said she was off on a mission. I think that would be the best course of action. But if it is a significant time jump, killing her off screen could work as well. Don't think it would be a terrible decision to think about. So,
on Star Wars in general for a second, do you think this hurts Star Wars when it comes to actors? This whole situation with Gina Carano, do you think this makes it? Is it worth? Okay, let's look at it from two different perspectives. Let's answer that question first. Is it worth on Star Wars? Is Star Wars still a valuable property to become a part of?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes, I agree.
It will be for years and years and years to come, I believe.
I think that if you're an actor, and I don't think that this is a great thing to do, but if you're an actor, don't say things that really involve political stances. I mean, I think that speaking your mind and speaking your opinion is a good thing.
Well, it's not safe to do that if you disagree with the
exactly.
where we're at in our political culture right now.
Exactly. I think that there are some actors that just keep their personal and political lives to themselves.
It's interesting. I think about this with Michael Jordan. You guys don't remember this story because you guys just know Michael Jordan from me talking about Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan's cool from what I've heard from him.
He's amazing. Greatest basketball player to ever live. Take that, LeBron James. Okay.
Just saying all the controversial things on this episode, aren't you?
Yeah. I'll be canceled for that one before the other stuff. No, not really. He, grew up in North Carolina, and there was a gentleman running for Senate in North Carolina, that he was being pressured during his, like the height of his career, Jordan's career, being pressured to endorse and campaign for. And he chose not to. He chose not to engage, because he's like, it's just not my place. That's just not who I am. I'm a basketball player. I'm not a political guy. And he chose not to. And was there backlash? Yeah, there was backlash. A lot of people criticized him, for it, in that state, because they wanted that guy to win the election, with it. But he's like, that's just not, I'm a basketball player. I'm going to go play basketball. With it. So I think what you're saying is that there's going to be a lot of Star Wars actors and talent that are going to be like, I'm a Star Wars actor. I'm just going to do that.
I'm going to act.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of Star Wars actors that also know being on social media is not the best thing because of the toxicity.
This is not a Gina Carano issue. No. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say from the beginning. It's bigger than Gina Carano because people canceled Daisy Ridley.
Exactly.
And Kelly Marie Tran to where they got so attacked that they left social media.
And they said it was for the better for them.
Yeah. Like she said, like Daisy Ridley came back this week. She's like, I'll never go to social media again. I'll never open a social media account again after this.
It makes sense.
There's a situation where this is a dangerous, time that we live in. And it's dangerous to be a Star Wars actor. With it, I just think that it's bad. Another reason it's bad for Star Wars is because the reality is we're going to see less and less engagement between Star Wars actors and their fans as a result of this.
Because that's part of what makes Star Wars so much fun.
It is sad. You're not going to see, Gina Carano was really interacting with her fans a lot. And we're going to see less of that. It's just not safe. It's just not safe as a major Star Wars actor anymore to interact with your fans, to interact on social media. At least not if you disagree with the primary narrative that's out there, with it in any way, shape, or form. And even then I see people getting attacked because they didn't say it the right way.
Yeah. You just don't say anything, really. And I don't think that's
not the way people should have to function.
Exactly. But it's a very complicated situation.
All right. Let's skip ahead. I'll come back to this other stuff in a minute. And we'll close with that. But let's talk about the show. Yeah. Our show. Okay. Can I be honest? And I think that our listeners should know this.
We haven't been honest this whole time?
Well, no, about the future. No, we've been really honest. Probably more so, than
we needed to be.
I think we did need to be.
Yeah. You're right.
But then people might like, but, when this got to the point, you brought it up a few minutes ago, BB Nate. Where I was talking about like social media is exhausting. Star Wars social media is exhausting. Star Wars fandom is exhausting. Mm-hmm. I was already exhausted by Star Wars fandom before the Gina Carano thing happened 2 weeks ago.
I was starting to be pretty exhausted by it too. I mean, I love Star Wars. I will forever love Star Wars, but there's a point
there's a difference though between Star Wars fandom and Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
And most of you, I absolutely adore and love, but Star Wars fandom as an organism is exhausting.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
At this point. And when all of this happened, here's what we knew needed to happen. We needed to speak our mind. We talked about it, as a team. We said, let's speak our mind. We weren't sure how we were going to do it, when we were going to do it. There was a point where we were going to take several weeks off before we did it. And then decided, no, let's take 1 week off and then do it. And that's what you're getting right now. But then there was also the talk, okay, do we just stop the show? Cause it's just not as much fun being a Star Wars fan right now. And that was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Cause I love doing this show with you guys, and I love interacting with you guys that are listening, and
it's given us so many amazing opportunities, and
it's just been a blast.
Yeah.
Doing this show has been amazing.
Yeah.
It's been so much fun. I never will regret doing this show.
No.
But there was a point a couple weeks ago, or when this all thing started, where I was like, I don't know if I want to do the Star Wars podcast anymore. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's not fun sometimes, you know? And really, are we able to speak our voice on certain things? Was the question, you know, are we going to get canceled because, of a political stance, or more importantly for us, a position, based on our faith? You know, are we going to get canceled for some of this?
Yeah.
And we talked about it. And then it was kind of like, well, we could just stop the show and just move on with our lives and watch Star Wars, right? And read books and talk about it around the table again, like we did before we started the podcast, right? But then I was, you know, the more we talked about it, the less that seemed like a reasonable option. Explain a little bit why we were going down why we decided we had to continue to do the show, Sam. Just us, you know, that providing an alternative voice in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, we have always tried to bring a different voice into Star Wars, not just politically. We don't address political voice. We don't. But we've always tried to bring a positive voice into things about everything, right? You know, especially Last Jedi. Everybody who listens to this knows we're Last Jedi apologists and all that. But, you know, we've always tried to bring a sense of positivity and fun into things. And we're like, you know, we've got a lot of people who like that about our show and who have thanked us for being that positive. And we're like, us dropping out because of this situation.
And it's not because of Gina Carano getting fired. I think that's the thing that needs to be really, really clear. No. It was just like, Star Wars fandom is exhausting, and I don't know if I want to continue to do this anymore.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But you were saying about, you know, we providing a voice and being a part of it.
Yeah, we want to still remain as that positive voice in Star Wars fandom. I'm not saying we're the only ones or we're the best or anything like that, but we are a positive voice in Star Wars fandom, and I don't think we didn't think it'd be right to remove that from fandom.
So we made some decisions with the show, and they're exciting.
Yeah. I'm excited about them.
I am.
All right. So Tatooine Sons, a Star Wars podcast, is just going to be Tatooine Sons going forward.
Tatooine Sons, a
pop culture podcast, and that means we are going to continue to talk about Star Wars,
of course,
like crazy,
always,
because we love Star Wars. But we're going to talk about other things because we want to allow ourselves opportunities to have other things to discuss and have some fun with things that we love outside of it. So we've got a couple things we're going to do. We are going to take a couple weeks off because frankly,
we need a breather.
Life is challenging enough as it is. And then, we just assumed that the next couple of weeks, it'll be good for us to take a break and breathe. And so we're not going to be doing a show for the next 2 weeks. And then we're going to shift our release date. I've been thinking about doing that for a while. We release on Mondays. We're going to release on Fridays. And the first time we're going to do that is March, is it the 12th?
Yes, March 12th.
March 12th. So we're going to start releasing again on March 12th, which happens to be the day.
WandaVision finale.
Hey.
And we're going to talk about WandaVision that day.
Oh, we are.
Just a little bit.
With that, because it being a pop culture contest, that gives us the or contest. Did I just say that?
Yes, the contest.
Podcast. That gives us the
pop culture podcast.
Yeah, it's kind of a tongue twister, so that'll be fun. I can't wait for the intro stuff on that, BB Nate, for you.
It's not that hard. It's got a nice cadence to it.
Podcast. Yeah, you can't get
Pop culture podcast.
Yeah.
Pop culture podcast. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And we can have some popcorn while we do it.
I kind of want popcorn chicken now.
Oh, yeah. So,
Nathan. Ooh.
But we'll talk about other things. We're going to talk about, we're going to talk about MCU stuff. This is the year of the MCU.
And we're like, if you're a long time listener, you know that before Nate and I were into Star Wars, we were massive Marvel fans. And it's kind of, for the past few weeks, I've kind of been straying from Star Wars just because there frankly hasn't been much in Star Wars, and kind of like getting that old MCU spirit back a little bit. I'm like, this is fun. I missed it. We loved Marvel. And so it'll be fun to go back and talk about it, especially with all this new content.
I remember when they released like 4 movies a year and that stuff, we were all like, oh, it's so much. And then having your break, I'm like, I miss having those 4 movies.
Well, this year's going to be crazy.
We are going to be busy.
Because immediately the week after WandaVision ends, Falcon and Winter Soldier begin, and then the week after that ends, Loki begins. In the middle of that, we're getting Black Widow. There's a ton of MCU content coming this year, and so it's going to be super fun to kind of engage with that franchise again in this new era, the Disney Plus era, Phase 4. With some crazy weird stuff happening.
So
already,
with the multiverse of madness. Your favorite, MCU movie, Nathan, is
Doctor Strange.
Yeah. So this is like building towards that, and Spider-Man stuff. You're a huge Spider-Man fan.
And so now it's connecting it excites me so much.
Yeah. But there's more than just that excites you, BB Nate. What else?
A little bit. We're going to be talking about DC a lot more, which excites me more than you can imagine. I'm just, of course, the week after we come back, the Snyder Cut or Zack Snyder's Justice League will be coming out. I think we'll talk about that a little bit.
We're going to talk about that on both those episodes. We'll talk about this stuff. Here's the point. We're going to talk an MCU. We're going to talk DC. We're going to talk about some comic book stuff, BB Nate, as you get into that.
Video games. Not even franchise video games necessarily. Just video games in general.
Games. And so the reality, the new format will include, we're going to have some very familiar things as part of the format, but we're going to talk about Star Wars every chance that we have a chance to talk about Star Wars. Exactly. If there's something significant going on with Star Wars, it's going to be part of the show.
Right.
I can't imagine a week going by where Star Wars isn't part of the conversation because it's such a big part of our fandom.
Right.
But we're going to talk about all of these different things as they go forward. BB Nate's going to have his own segment. He's going to pick a topic. He's going to create the questions around it. You're going to lead the conversation on that. Samuel's going to have his own segment where he gets to do the same thing. And then I'll do my segment. Thank God. That's going to take 2 segments off of my plate from having a plan. I'll take that.
Put it on ours.
Exactly. And we'll just have some fun geeking out about the stuff that we talk about all the time anyway. And that kind of goes back to the original start of this show.
We talk about Star Wars all the time.
So we started a podcast, but we also talk about MCU. We talk about Snyder Cut. We talk about DC. We talk about your games. We talk about all these things, and we're going to keep Lord of the Rings.
Oh yes,
is a big part of it. We're going to have some, some interesting waters to navigate with that in the Amazon Prime series that's coming out. We aren't sure if that's going to be family friendly, and so that's curious. But whatever we feel like talking about, if it's pop culture related, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to have some fun. And we hope you'll join us from that.
We know it's a big change, but we think ultimately it'll be better and a lot of fun.
Yeah. We want you guys to understand that while this podcast, and we said it from the beginning, and you've noticed it if you're all the way to this point, is very different than any other podcast episode that we've ever done.
Longer.
This show, though we're making these changes.
Yep.
We're not a political podcast, and we're not going to get political. We're not going to start, going down that path. But when things impact the franchises that we love directly, like what happened with Gina Carano, we are going to address those issues.
Maybe not in such a long form.
No, that was just, we needed to kind of this was therapeutic for us.
Right.
Or at least for me, not BB Nate. BB Nate's going to have to go get counseling after this because he doesn't like conflict. So, but
unwind, watch a movie or something, right?
Yeah.
It's a popcorn.
It's not political, but at the same time, this has been the case since episode 1, and this will not change. Our faith is front and center.
Yes.
We do not hide the fact that we are Christians, that we are part of a kingdom, and that kingdom is not exclusively, the United States. We're part of the kingdom of God, and we are first and foremost citizens of that kingdom, and that impacts everything that we do. And our loyalty is to our King, and righteousness and justice will not be sacrificed on the altar of popularity. And so if we need to say something, we will.
Yep.
Hopefully we won't have to do that for another 4 years. That'd be awesome.
Hey, we made it this far.
Yeah.
Although we're opening it up to a whole new range of fandoms, so we might get a whole lot more drama.
No, I think we're going to be fine. It gives us more options to just sort of breathe with it. And I think it's going to be good. And a phrase that we've been talking about in this family all year long, it's something I pray every single morning, is found in Psalms chapter 19, verse 14. It says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and redeemer." The things that we think about and focus our hearts on, and the things that we say, whether it's verbally or in 100 or 280 characters or on a podcast, on Facebook, whatever. Our desire is to bring honor to our God, and we're going to continue to fight to do that. So, any other comments on that stuff?
You covered it.
I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay, well, that's my job. Some final thoughts before we say sayonara for a couple of weeks, and you guys go pick up some moving boxes that we're gonna need for hopefully soon. We all know the great, moment in the Civil War, MCU movie, Captain America Civil War, when Sharon Carter is at the funeral for Peggy, and she's, talking about this moment where she, her Aunt Peggy told her that, when the world is fighting against you, telling you to move, sometimes you have to say, no, you move. And that actually, and I think most of you listening to this show know this, but that comes from the Civil War comics in the Marvel Universe. And actually, it's from Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, Issue 537. Spider-Man is dealing with being pulled in multiple directions during the Civil War. And he goes to Cap, and he's like, Cap, what are we going to do here? How do I handle this? And this is Captain America's response. He says to Peter Parker, he says, "I was just a kid 1,000,000 years ago. It seems sometimes, maybe 12. I was reading Mark Twain, and he wrote something that struck me right down to my core. Something so powerful, so true that it changed my life. I memorized it so I could repeat it to myself over and over across the years. He wrote, 'In a republic, who is the country? Is it the government, which is for the moment in the saddle? Why, the government is merely a temporary servant. It cannot be its prerogative to determine what is right and wrong and decide who is a patriot and who isn't. Its function is to obey orders, not originate them. Who then is the country? Is it the newspaper? Is it the pulpit? Why, these are mere parts of the country, not the whole of it. They have not command. They have only their little share in the command. In a monarchy, the king and his family are the country. In a republic, it is the common voice of the people, each of you for himself, by himself, and on his own responsibility must speak. It is a solemn and weighty responsibility, and not lightly to be flung aside at the bullying of pulpit press, government, and empty catchphrases of politicians. Each must for himself alone decide what is right and what is wrong, and which course is patriotic and which isn't. You cannot shirk this and be a man. To decide it against your convictions is to be an unqualified and inexcusable traitor, both to yourself and to your country. Let men label you as they may. If you alone of all the nation shall decide one way, and that way be the right way according to your convictions of the right, you have your duty by yourself and by your country. Hold up your head. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Doesn't matter what the press says. Doesn't matter what the politicians or the mobs say. Doesn't matter if the whole country decides that something is wrong, is something right. Let me read that again to make sure I'm clear on what I said. Doesn't matter if the whole country decides that something wrong is something right. The nation was founded on one principle above all else, the requirement that we stand up for what we believe, no matter the odds or the consequences. When the mob and the press and the whole world tell you to move, your job is to plant yourself like a tree beside the river of truth and tell the whole world, no, you move. And that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's chilling.
Mm-hmm.
However, we are also citizens of a country outside the United States, and Captain America misses one element. It's what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. I say to you, love your enemy. Pray for those who persecute you so that you may be like your Father in heaven, since he causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you have love for those who love you, what reward do you have? Even the tax collectors do the same thing, don't they? They didn't even like tax collectors 2,000 years ago. And if you only greet your brothers or those people that agree with you on something politically, socially, even in Star Wars, what more do you say? Even the pagans do that. So be perfect or complete. Be whole, even as your Father in heaven is complete and whole. I think that'll pretty much do it for this week. Anything else you guys want to say?
I think it's funny. We close out the episode with a quote from Captain America and Jesus.
Yeah, that's our podcast right there. So it's the way we've done it for a long time.
That's the way we'll be doing it from now on.
Yeah, I mean, not just Cap, but, pop culture informs, we've said it. Star Wars is a story that speaks to something within each of us that is a larger story. It's no different when it comes to Marvel and DC and Lord of the Rings and Narnia and all these other amazing stories that are out there. The reason that these things like Captain America's quote resonates in our soul is because there's eternity written on our hearts, just like those words by Jesus resonate in our soul. And that's what you have come to expect from Tatooine Sons over the years. And that's what you can continue to expect from Tatooine Sons. We're just going to throw some other stories in to the mix. And we hope you'll join us for this journey, however long we're doing it, going forward. That'll pretty much do it for this week. Anything you guys want to say?
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you, always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please.
Yep, yep.